Here's some of the trends that we're seeing. First, documentation. Most landlords now have 3 leases. First lease is called a franchise agreement. It's 2 pages. Straightforward. Tenant wants space for maybe less than 18 months. They're going to take it as is. They enter into a franchise agreement. They move in. It's just as easy as can be. Mark shows them the space today. They're in the space tomorrow paying rent. Matter of fact, we get the checking account number. We debit the account, or we have a credit card. There's no invoicing. Become very popular. First time I saw it was Sun Life when I was in Canada. Second, which has become very, very popular, has been the service agreement. 6 to 8 pages, typically for a tenant less than 5 years. Taking 3,000 to 4,000 square feet doesn't need a lot of TI, maybe a couple dollars a square foot. In this, 6, 7 page service agreement, the landlord is called the service provider, the tenant is called the customer or the guest, and the lease is called the service agreement. We've had clients call it a speed lease, flex lease, quick lease, service agreement. It's called anything but a lease, all right? Can you imagine you're showing space, and this building right here has a 30-page standard lease with 3 pages of rules and regs with eminent domain and escalations. You got this building across the street, pretty much the same building, 5-page service agreement, no escalations, no eminent domain, and it's called the service agreement. I'm just thinking out loud here. Prospect has a choice. They're thinking, I don't even know where to begin to negotiate this lease. Do I need 3 law firms? This person over here with the 5-page service agreement says, I can read this. I understand what it's saying. And those clients of mine that have gone to the service agreements have all told me. They started off thinking it was going to be for 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. It's ended up being now for 5,000 and 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. And the reason is we've all learned one thing the last 2 years. The length of the lease has nothing to do with whether they're going to pay their rent or not. I mean, really, let's just get real here. I mean, how many 50-page leases are out there right now that still have 2 years left that the tenant has come in and said, I need a 35% rent reduction. And if not, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, blend and extend has been a huge part of the business the last 2 years. And many of my landlords have been approaching their tenants saying, I know you still have 2 years left on your lease. You're kind of paying $4 or $5 a square foot above the market. I'm willing to roll you down to the market if you give me another 2-year term. So I understand we need a 50-page lease for a 50,000 square foot user because that's how we're getting our financing. But for a 3,000 square foot tenant, and really, eminent domain. When was the last time the highway took a building in 24 months? Really. I mean, and we sit there and we will negotiate for 2 days something that will not happen. Escalations. Let's just get... I'm going to calm myself down here. It costs 35 cents a square foot to account for escalations. And they're never right anyway. So why don't we just tell the client, say, listen, here's your rent this year, here's your rent next year, and here's your rent the next year. And someone go do some kind of that thing, what do you call that thing in math, that progression analysis, linear thing. Just do it and build another 25 cents or 30 cents in there on top of it just to be safe. But the tenant finally knows, I finally know what my rent's going to be. I don't have to wait for January to open up an envelope to find out. Now, you might have a couple of wild cards. I don't know what there are in the district in Virginia. I know different states have different kind of crazy things like utilities. So 1 or 2 items might be protected. But the rest of them, we have an idea what repairs and maintenance are going to be. We have an idea what the insurance is going to be, don't we? So why do we have to surprise them every year? Just tell them what the number is going to be. Let's make the documentation much, much easier. And then we do see a standard form lease. But we're using the standard form lease less and less. Another trend that we're seeing. Many of you know my dear friend Tom Bakke. Been with Equity Office for many years. Blackstone EOP. Tom and I have taught for many, many years. About 5 years ago, he says something. He says to the group, we've always had this 36-point pricing thing when we were pricing space at EOP. So I pushed him. We hired a young MBA, and we worked on this thing. We now have what's called the Bakke pricing tool. We now have one for office, retail, industrial. We get in there a couple of recent comps. You can do it from your iPad. You can do it from your PC. And you can go to our website. The pricing tool's there. And here's what really made me get it done. I'm working with one of our landlord clients in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm looking at their next year's budget. Everything's $32 a square foot. I said, how's that possible? They said, well, that's where we start. I said, but you got Suite 100 that looks into the parking garage, and the suite on the 5th floor looks at Squaw Peak. How can everything be price it properly? So we go through there and we price, the view, we price the proximity to the elevator, and we score it 1 through 5 on all the things. What's the condition of the space? Does it have a kitchen? Does it have a raised floor? And guess what? Suite 100 is $27.50. It's not $32. And if a prospect comes and I give this prospect who's looking at Suite 100 a 5-page service agreement, and I quote $27.50 instead of giving them a 50-page lease with 3 pages of rules and regs at $32, I'll lease that space faster. That is one of the fastest growing trends that we're seeing. Flexibility in documentation and more accurate pricing. Why do we have to take 6 months to negotiate to $27.50? We're going to get there anyway. It's like you go to the Mercedes thing and you want a car. Everything's $80,000. Everything. C-Class, E-Class, S-Class, G-Class, M-Class, GL Class. It don't matter. We got to negotiate. I mean, C-Classes have multiple prices depending on whether it's a 63 or... Right? How can we not do that in real estate? You go to the Irvine Company, go to their website, one of our clients for many, many years. Every space is priced separately and individually. If, let's say, you want to look at something on across from Fashion Island, well, front of the building looks over at there, at Fashion Island. The back of the building looks at the Pacific. Some has lower views that look at the surface parking. Some you can see the Pacific. Each suite is priced individually. That's the way it should be. Someone should walk the space and look at the views and look at the existing condition and do we have technology here and what's the proximity to the elevator and all the other kinds of things. And you're scoring a 1 through 5, 1 through 5. And when you go to the tool that we give you and we don't charge for it, it'll automatically, once you put a couple of comps in, we'll give you what the resulting price should be. You will lease that space faster. You know what the fastest leasing space is right now? Furnished space, flexible terms. That is the fastest leasing space today. I've had landlords get all upset that they've kicked the tenant out and they ended up with all this furniture. What are we going to do with this furniture? I say, I tell you what you can do with the furniture. Go find a space that's 3,000 square feet. Clean the carpet and paint it. Put the furniture in that space. You'll lease it by tomorrow afternoon. And it's been true. I can't tell you how many of our landlords have taken nasty full floor spaces, 2,500 square feet, 3,000, furnished some of that, and they're leasing it with no TI, and but the tenant says, I love it. I don't have to go out and buy furniture. I don't have to wait months for the space to be built out. I'll take it as is. And you're getting a premium because the furniture's in there, which you seized from a tenant who went out of business 6 months ago. And I got to tell you, that's almost been universal. As I cross all time zones, I'll ask brokers, what's been your fastest leasing space? And they'll say furnished space with flexible terms. Another trend that we see, and I'm not saying this because Chris and Mike are here, performance leasing. Performance leasing is an arrangement where the landlord hires a broker, and there's an agreement on how many times they're going to show the space each month, when the first letter of intent is expected, when the first letter of intent becomes a lease. And the landlord pays the broker a monthly retainer plus a commission. Let me say that again. The landlord pays the broker a monthly retainer plus a traditional commission. And here's the reason why. I don't know about your marketplace, but many markets where you're 10 and 12 and 14% vacant, you need to have a broker who is focused on your property. And I've asked this question 1,000 times. If a broker, let's say, has 20 listings, and I say on only one of those listings, you're getting a monthly retainer at the end of the month when you turn in your report to your owner on actually what you did. Of the 20 listings, which do you think would get the greatest attention? The one that's getting the monthly retainer. And in the last 12 to 18 months, that has been a fabulous approach to leasing today's vacancy and to get more focus from a broker and their team. Now in 2011, 2012, when we start seeing equilibrium again, I don't think we'll see as much of it. But today, When you're 10 and 12% vacant, the broker needs to be compensated differently for them to give you more of their time. What other item? Oh, and here's the final one, which is not happening, but I hope it will become a trend. We have got to stop doing all this demolition and build out. It is awful. It is awful to think that we've got to rip out perfectly good space every 5 years, which costs us $3 to $4 a square foot, to come back and do $50 a square foot in TI. I mean, it really is awful. And I love it. Some of you guys have buildings that have bike racks now, so you're green, and you got a shower that no one uses. But at the same time, behind your building, you've got 5, 20 to 30 yard roll-offs, okay? And so you've got your bike rack and your shower, but every 3 years you rip out the entire interior. Take the floors, take the doors, take the carpet, just take it down to slab, all right? We're a green building though, but just rip out the interior every 3 years. To me, when you think about it, I don't think there's anything that has hurt the capital value of commercial real estate more than the crazy concept of demolition and TI. Please tell me that an office tenant, maybe an industrial tenant, they can't take that space and do a little something to it and get it close to what they want. Do they really have to take it down to the slab every 60 months? It makes no sense. And I got to tell you, most of my clients that are running out of cash, it's bad enough that they're 85% occupied. It's because of the heavy capital that's now required to fit up a tenant. It is ruining this business. And if we ever get back to 94 and 95%, I hope somehow, some way, we can convince the industry we really want to be green. We have got to stop doing demolition TI. And so those of us in commercial real estate, here's the good news. We're kind of on the other side of a pretty unpleasant 2 years. But we must find ways to innovate what we do. This industry tends to be pretty set in its ways. Let's look at pricing, let's look at documentation, let's look at flexibility, let's look at how we compensate our brokers. I mean, we really need to start saying, what can we do to innovate to better serve those who we do business with?